of all, I must admit it's a very, very sad day, but not only for me, but for many, many Israelis. I see the amount of condolences messages that I received today. And I knew my boss. Yes, it was my boss. That my boss was loved and respected by Israelis, but I didn't know to which extent. Now, concerning the man by himself, I mean, I would say that knowing him and working for Israel Hayom, 12 years already, it's my 13th year and 4 years as editor-in-chief, I did see Mr. Adelson many times, in many occasions, many situations, and in many countries. And has always stunned me, amazed me, was the fact that he could be, I mean, he would have he would give the same respectability or the same treatment, if you want, to a president, which he knew and he spoke with, and not only Americans. And it would be the same to a bus driver, to a kid who came for Taglit. And I would say that for me, it was always stunning to see Mr. Adelson being like happy, and this is the word, in a small popular restaurant in Atikva, for those who know Israel, like a small steakhouse, very popular, and he would be the same way when he would speak to President. I saw him with President Trump, I saw him with Mitt Romney, I saw him with President Bush, and you would see exactly the same person. And why? Because he had this guiding line, and his line was his family, of course, his wife that he loved, his kids, of course, but very, very much the state of Israel, the land of Israel, and the people of Israel. And yes, one more thing, as I'm the editor-in-chief of his newspaper, he loved media. Yes, he did. I mean, he didn't agree with most of the media, but he was very, very fond with journalism, and especially he liked his newspaper, happily for me.
Right. He also owned the newspaper in Las Vegas. Boaz, President Trump speaking on Sheldon Adelson today, noted especially his advocacy of moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, of the U.S. recognizing the sovereignty of Israel over the Golan Heights. Let me ask you, how much of a factor was he in those decisions? I mean, without Sheldon Adelson, would President Trump have moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem?
Okay, so you're asking me a question that yesterday and today I might have answered you differently. Yesterday I would be more diplomatic. Tonight I'll be more blunt. First of all, I would start by saying that Mr. Adelson, I mean, for me it would be very odd, very, very awkward even to see Dr. Adelson by herself, because Mr. Adelson were two in one, meaning Mr. Adelson, Dr. Adelson, always together, thinking together, building their economical or their financial empire together, but also the love towards Israel and Israelis and Judaism and people by themselves, because it was also philanthropy, also not only for Judaism, but it was also about people. They cared about people, and I could speak to you hours about the concern for drug addicts in their centers in Vegas and in Israel, to Jews and non-Jews, especially non-Jews in Vegas. Now, concerning your question, as I said before, Israel was his this was his idea. Israel was for him an idea, and an idea that he was serving it. In fact, sometimes I had the feeling that he was doing his business in order to have money for his philanthropy. I mean, one was for the other. And you're asking me a question, and today, I mean, I would say that I was lucky. I was privileged to be near Dr. Adelson and Mr. Adelson in those last 4 years with Trump's presidency right now. And I would say that I saw them working really hard. Now, these are things, Jerusalem, for example, the transfer of the embassy, or, for example, fighting for Mr. Paula to fly back to Israel and being liberated by all the means, the technical means that he had on him, that he couldn't move a lot. I saw them fighting for those causes, and I would say that they have a great, in the last miracles that we had in Israel, Mr. Adelson with his wife had the very, very important part, and for that, I mean, we should be, or we are, very, very grateful. But this was Mr. Adelson. I mean, only to show you one thing, for those who watched the movie, if you remember, there was a movie about the Schindler List, and you would see over there, and I don't want to make any comparison, although it was very keen on Yad Vashem and contributing. But remember when that person was saying, Mr. Schindler, I can always do more? And that was a thing when I was thinking of Mr. Adelson, always doing more, but not only for Jews, for people. Always, what can I do more? And we know, for example, last week, 2 weeks ago, when Mr. Pollard came back in his plane, we know about Mr. Bill for Houdat Salah, who came back with his plane. But if you knew the amount of people or the amount of times his plane was serving just regular people, or his bank account for regular people, I would see that. And if you permit me just one little story.
Very quickly, 30 seconds, boss.
27 seconds. For me, Mr. Adelson is what? Not all the big stories on Trump and Bush and presidencies. For me, is December 2015, a very important person waiting for him, expecting him in his office. And Mr. Adelson in this clinic of his wife for drugs addict. And he's there for Christmas, giving them gifts. And his secretary telling him, Mr. Adelson, Mr. X is waiting for you. And that's really important. And he said, hey, let him wait. I'm with my friends right now. And this was Mr. Adelson. He had the simplicity of great people.